have missed you. I really have. I've been on vacation for a little bit. You can tell. But it is still Summer Tuesday, and I am back, and I'm thrilled because I've got a lot of really great stuff for you tonight. I just hope you'll hold on because it takes a long time to get it all out to you. The first thing is something that I've been sort of twisting inside about. We first brought you the story of this kid, a 17-year-old kid in high school, beating the living daylights out of his teacher's aide. It was all caught on surveillance tape. It made really big headlines. You probably saw it. It's really disturbing, right? This teacher's aide was beaten unconscious, and you know, the kid, 17, but really, really big, and really special needs. That's a big part of this. Well, he's now been sentenced as an adult. And half of you are going to say, throw away the key, right? And then the other half of you are going to say, well, he's special needs, so that had to come into it, right? Like the school has some responsibility here. Right? This is him with his mom. And she spoke with us, as did the teacher's aide who was beaten within an inch of her life. And they all had different things to say. I am really, really dying to know how you're going to weigh in on this one, especially when you find out what the judge decided, how long that boy is going to have to stay in prison. Okay, so then also, do you remember the story we brought you? I think it was it in January, the beheading story, January? Yeah, okay, not that long ago, like 7-8 months ago. Guy accused of severing his own father's head and then holding it up on camera, that in a plastic bag, doing a crazy YouTube report that he just taken out his dad because he had this conspiracy theory about his dad as a government, you know, it was all crazy stuff. Now the judge says he's competent to stand trial. But can you be competent and absolutely out of this world crazy? This is a great discussion because you probably saw that video and instantly thought, he's loony, right? Gone. Like there is no sense. That has got to be a classic insanity case. So how can you be competent to stand trial if you might also be insane? I got it all for you. I'm going to lay it all out. And then, weird story. It's a little complicated, but follow the bouncing ball. Guy gets convicted years ago of serial killing, right? Complication in the law. The results are thrown out. But they're coming after him again, right? The law is coming after this guy again. And as he marches, I don't know if you can spot anything. Like, can you tell that he's kind of like into hunting? I can't tell anything about him from this. But I can tell you what he said in court as his defense for being accused of killing 3 people and trying to kill a 4th. The government gave him hunting tags for human targets. The government gave him tags like a deer hunter to hunt humans. Seriously. So I want to just let you know what happened in round 2 when they came at him again and how long the jury deliberated. I think you might not be surprised, but I think you might be a little surprised. There's a twist anyway. But let me start here because sometimes I really honestly wish I was a judge. Not always. No, it's like just sometimes. Especially like those cases when we're following something really disturbing. Details are really gruesome. It's actually pretty normal. You're probably not unlike me. You just want to bring the gavel down and put the guy away fast and forever, right? And then there's days like today and judges like Terrence Perkins in Florida, whose job I would not have chosen, or at the last job on earth, and I was starving. Because today it was up to Judge Perkins to sentence this kid, young offender named Brendan Dea. And the name could be familiar to you because in February last year, when Brendan was just 17 years old, he brutally attacked his teacher's aide at his high school, a woman named Joan Niditch. Joan was really messed up, right? She was badly injured, and she still suffers from a lot of the injuries that were inflicted on her in that attack. Brendan was arrested, like right away, right there. Hands behind, he's in the school hallway and he's getting cuffed. He was charged as an adult, even though he was 17. And he eventually pleaded no contest to aggravated battery. And you might think that's not such a big deal, but it is. It's punishable by up to 30 years. He'll be almost 50 when he gets out. The beating was horrifying. It was captured on the school security camera. And I am going to show you this video, right? But you do need to know it's not easy to look at. So big warning about the disturbing nature of it. And then I'll give you the backstory. The trouble here actually started back in the classroom behind the camera. It started when Brendan's Nintendo Switch game console was taken away from him inside the classroom. And the teacher's aide had come to retrieve him and transition him to another class. Transition. Remember that. Transitions are really tough, really bad for kids with special needs. So as the teacher then walks out into the hallway, the video shows Brendan chasing her down, shoving her to the ground, and then relentlessly pummeling her. Hands, feet, kicking, punching. And it even takes several adults to pull him off of her, right? Try to restrain him. Joan Niditch had her ribs broken. She had a concussion. She was beaten unconscious. And if all we had to go on was what I just told you, and this horrendous video, those awful details, I think Judge Perkins would have had a pretty easy day, right? So would you. You wouldn't feel anything about putting him away for 30 years. There is a lot more to this story. I alluded to it before. Brendan Dea is a special needs student, and he suffers from an unbelievably long list of disorders and conditions, things that make his behavior very difficult to control, to say the least. I want to show you the list, okay? I'm going to read it off to you, just so you know what we're dealing with here. This is what he's been diagnosed with. Severe autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, oppositional defiance disorder, ODD, intermittent explosive disorder, mood dysregulation disorder, PTSD, anxiety, and then just cap it all off with depression. Brendan's family, again, you saw that picture of his mom hugging him. They say that, like, some of the most mundane things, stuff in your kitchen, can absolutely terrify him. You ready for this? Stickers on bananas terrifies Brendan Dea. The sound of flies and rubber bands, of all things, like rubber bands, don't get them near Brendan. Brendan's school knew about this, right? They knew all about his conditions, multiple, plural. He had what's called an individual education program. A lot of you are watching right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We call them IEPs, right? Moms with special needs kids, you usually get an IEP, an individualized education program for your kids, so that the school can help your kid access the curriculum like the typicals, right? This IEP was supposed to help Brendan navigate his conditions, but his lawyer argued in a lawsuit that IEP, that individual education plan, it was not followed by the school. It was also not followed by Brendan's group home. And not following this incredibly important plan put Brendan and others at risk. That's the argument. According to the attorneys, and I'll quote them, the district failed to provide proper support and services to Dea before and after his arrest, as well as failed to provide proper training to the staff working with him. The group home was aware that electronics, that was a trigger for him. Remember I told you about the Nintendo Switch? Right before this happened, they had taken a Nintendo Switch away from him, and apparently he wasn't supposed to have it in the first place at that time. You want to take something like that away from a kid with that kind of a disorder? You don't just take it. You got to, like, have a strategy. Multiple people even, maybe, you know? Like, this is serious stuff, and it's real. So now I ask you this. How many years, if any, in a grown-up prison does Brendan Dea deserve to serve? Judge Perkins' decision came in today. 5 years. 17-year-old kid, all those disorders, does this horrible beating. 5 years in grown-up jail. And that's not all. 15 more years probation. So he's been locked up all this time, right? He didn't get out on bail. So time already served, 17 and a half months. Brendan is going to be locked up until the spring of 2027. Sentencing followed a day of testimony from a lot of people who were supporting Brendan, including his mom. There she is. She tried to convince the judge that sending her son Brendan to prison was going to be a benefit to nobody.
Brendan has, he's had a hard life. He started out as a foster care baby who struggled, and he's felt abandoned by his birth family, and he felt abandoned by us when I sent him to South Carolina. He struggles with autism and behavioral issues. But other than that year where we had just extreme chaos from medical stuff going on, I was able to manage Brendan because I knew Brendan and I knew his triggers and I knew his needs and his strengths. And I beg you to let him come home with me. I want my son back. Thank you.
After Brendan's arrest, both the victim, Joe Nidich, and Brendan's mom were guests on this program separately. And I asked each of them who is to blame for what happened in that school and who should be punished. And here's some of what they both said.
Jail is the place for him. He did a violent crime, and he has to pay for that. And I'm going to ask the judge for no leniency, no mercy. I don't get any. I wake up every single morning, whether it's a headache or my shoulder hurts or my ribs hurt or something hurts, and I have to be reminded of this, and this is going to be for the rest of my life.
Why did the school even allow a Nintendo Switch to be part of any aspect of his day?
You know, that's something I ask every day, and I don't understand why. That in his IEP, it was stated that in the intensive behavior group home that he was living in, if they ever had to remove it as a consequence, they called in the crisis team. This year, he had a new teacher who, it's not Joan. Joan was not his teacher. She's a para. He had a new teacher who, it was her first year teaching, and I don't know if she didn't understand the IEP, if she didn't read it, but she approached the group home and asked the group home to send it in. He was placed in an intensive behavioral group home, and I questioned it at the beginning. I had always homeschooled him because he didn't handle the school environment. I asked the group home, did he have to go to public school? Could he not do school online? And I was assured by them that all of their clients went to public school. So even though he was a level 6 and I never thought he belonged in public school, I didn't have a choice.
This is a good time to bring in Dr. Jeff Gardier. He's a clinical psychologist and author of the book, The Causes of Autism. Jeff, it's great to have you on for this. I wanted to get your reaction to that sentence.
Yeah, certainly there are so many victims here. Certainly Joan Nidich is a victim, but also Brendan Dea is a victim too. This is a person who has severe mental issues, severe mental health problems. I don't know whether jail is the place for him to be, in that many of these jails just don't provide the kind of mental health treatment that he needs.
I want to ask you about that in a minute, but I also want to mention something else I think is important, Jeff, and it's that Brendan had 3 prior misdemeanor battery charges on his juvenile record, and that seemed to influence the judge. I want to read what the judge said. Although this event was senseless, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that at the time of this event, Mr. Dea was 17 years of age. However, this was not an isolated incident, the judge says. It's an event that shows the progression of aggression and violence that Mr. Dea was exerting on those around him. So I get it. I get what the judge is saying. I get what Joan Nidich is saying. Her life has been destroyed, right, by this assault. But let's go back to what you just said. Is prison going to change that for anybody? I mean, is anybody going to benefit from prison? You know, is it going to caution someone else? I mean, the special needs kid, is it going to change Brendan's condition?
No, absolutely not. Look, my heart goes out to Joan Niditch, as yours does also, Ashleigh. But at the end of the day, with this judge saying that there were priors here, this is not about Brendan Dea. This is about the failing of our society, the failings of the schools. This is a person who has severe autism. This is the diagnosis in addition to other mental health issues. So if you see aggression here, it's because we're not taking care of the needs of this individual, and this is very difficult to do. We know that. But at the end of the day, this person going to prison, not only does it not benefit society, not only does it cost society, endless amounts of money, but how does someone with severe autism actually do a prison sentence? That in itself is going to be a nightmare.
Quick answer here, and that is that Brendan turns 19, I think, on August the 22nd. And we all know if we have teenage kids, once they turn 18, moms and dads don't have any control over their, health care. And in prison, is his mother going to have any say at all in how his life is governed behind bars, or is she just going to have to watch from the outside?
Well, if he's deemed to be competent, then she may not have any say whatsoever. He's going to need advocates. He's going to need social workers. He's going to need people to help rehabilitate, but also give him the treatment that he has not gotten and that he certainly needs. And one other thing, allegedly, his medications were cut off, psychiatric medications, when he was in prison. That already is a bad sign as to what may happen while he does the remainder of his time in prison.
I worry for him, and I worry for other inmates as well, especially if he's not getting the protocol care that he needs as a special needs person. Dr. Jeff Gardere, thank you. It's good to see you again. I appreciate this.
Great to see you. Thank you.
I want to bring in Dan Morgan now. Dan is an attorney and managing partner of the mega firm Morgan & Morgan. You see them everywhere. You see him on this show and everywhere else too. Dan, good to have you. I want the legal side of this because I'm all twisted up inside. I told you off the top of the show, I wouldn't want to be this judge. I see both sides. I feel for both sides. Legally speaking, do you come at this basically from a civil perspective, like someone needs to pay because the criminal side's now taken care of? Somebody needs to account for what happened.
For sure. And I see civil sides for both of it, for both the teacher involved and for Brendan involved as well. If his care and his protocol is not being followed, that put him in this situation. But there also is the criminal side as well, too. If he's had a prior past of, I think, 3 incidences and this one happened, there's obviously, the men's right. Does he know right from wrong? Does he know what he's doing? And the judge here determined he did know what he's doing. And, this is the attempt to try to rehabilitate Brendan.
So here's what I am struggling with, and not to put you in the judge's position, but I'm just trying to bounce some ideas here. The lowest possible sentence that this judge could have actually handed out was, I think, 2.87 years in the state sentencing guidelines, right? But he went with 5. Is that kind of like striking a devil's bargain between 30, which was obviously exorbitant, and 2.87, which would have been a slap in the face to Joan Niditch, who's maybe got a life sentence?
Yeah, I think both sides here are probably unhappy with the result. I think Joan probably wanted more. The family obviously wanted him to be released on their own. But it goes down to the prior records. You see, you have the judge has to take all those factors and put them into account. And hopefully while he's in there, or since he's been in there already, I've already seen he's had other incidences with fights and with other jails, inmates and things of that nature. So obviously when you get sentenced, it's either to deter future harm for the person doing it and to compensate the victim for it. And then when you're in there to make the determination, can this person be rehabilitated and be a member of society, or can they not? Do they have to stay in some type of supervision? So I think the 5 years, the judges kind of wait and see, but there's already been more incidences with Brendan while he's been in prison.
Yeah, I'm worried about him in prison, his own safety, the safety of the other inmates, right? Somebody crosses him like Joan Niditch did, a trigger that the other inmates don't know. They don't know they're triggering him. But then I'm also worried about, will prison make him so much more dangerous when he is released? And then who's to blame if something even worse happens? I've only got a minute, but what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, that's when you really come down to it, is the rehabilitation. What programs are going on? What are they doing to make sure that when they release them, that the next time someone takes something from him or he sees something or hears something, that he doesn't have another trigger and ends up back there. And now instead of doing 5 years, he's doing 15 years because the punishments keep heightening. So, I really think it's going to come down to what comprehensive program are they going to put him through. And I know that I read that they're going to have him in a mental program to hopefully rehabilitate him. But I really don't think that right now that justice is being served on really either side of it.
I'm with you. I'm always appreciative when you come on and say hi to your dad. I love you guys. You're good people. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, still to come. You can believe nonsensical things. You can commit unspeakable crimes. You can be nutty as a fruitcake, and still in the eyes of the law, you can be competent to stand trial. After a break, a case in point that's worthy of Stephen King, a conspiracy theorist allegedly cuts off the head of his own father and then displays it, the severed head, live on YouTube. The defense says it's obvious, he's delusional. But the judge says, I'll see you in court. Why is that? And what's going to happen? That's next. Crazy is crazy. Competent is competent. And those are two very different things, at least where the law is concerned. You can shoot your own father, chop off his head with a machete and wrap that head in plastic and display it live on YouTube. And maybe, just maybe, you can convince a jury that you're insane and beat the criminal rap, kind of. I said maybe. However, that does not mean that you will not have to stand trial. And there is a whole other standard that you got to meet first to stand trial, and that's competency. Are you even competent to stand in court and face a trial in the first place and mount, maybe, insanity as your defense? A Pennsylvania man named Justin Moan is accused of doing all those terrible things to his father that I just laid out and to his father's head. Happened back in January, and we've told you this story before. In a stomach-turning video where he lifts up his dad's severed head in a plastic bag, he basically just reveals all the evidence against him on the internet while spouting off crazy conspiracy theories and more or less declaring war on the government. His now murdered father worked for the Army Corps of Engineers, which I guess made that dad, in his son's eyes, some kind of a traitor. I know, it sounds preposterous, especially when you see the family picture. They look happy. At a hearing last Thursday, an expert who was testifying on behalf of Justin Moan, the defendant, told the court that my client is delusional. And that may be. But the judge had a couple questions of his own for the defendant, like, did Justin understand that if he's convicted, he could face death or maybe life without parole? And Justin Moan answered. He seemed to indicate that he certainly did understand that. And whammo, that is all the judge needed to hear. Because with those answers, defendant is ruled competent to stand trial. I got to fill in a couple blanks, though, here, and that's why I bring in Alexandra Kazarian. She's a criminal defense attorney who spent almost a decade as a public defender in L.A. Alexandra, thank you so much for being here. So it's a little more than just understanding the charges against you. Like, do you know that this charge could, meet death upon you or life? And he said yes. What else is the bar? Like, what else had to happen before the judge said, you're standing trial, you're competent?
So we don't try people if they're not physically present in court. And if mentally you don't understand what's happening, then you are deemed to be not present. You're not mentally aware, then you're technically not physically present. So the question always is, it's two prongs. Are you aware of the proceedings against you? And are you aware of the charges and the consequences? That's just one prong. The second prong should be, are you able to participate in your defense? And that second prong is what gets glossed over in court by prosecutors and unfortunately by judges a lot of the time. Because yes, he may understand that he's on trial for murder. He may understand that if he's convicted, he could face the death penalty. But if he is directing his defense attorney that his defense in the case is that his father was a traitor because he was working for the Army Corps of Engineers and it was his duty to kill his father because it was a greater good, if that's his defense, he's not able to actually participate in his defense because that's not a rational defense. So defense attorneys always have this problem where, okay, yeah, my client understands that he's being charged with murder, but he thinks the murder is justified because he's still operating under the delusion that he was at the time, which actually makes him not guilty by reason of insanity. So it's a very hard push and pull for the defense because it's not just that he understands the proceeding. He can't participate.
Right. And so it's important for everybody who's with us right now to note that the competency, those two prongs are one part. Can you actually make it into this courtroom? You can bring up your insanity defense if you end up having to stand trial. But I wanted to ask you this. Justin Moan was sitting in court. While everything was being laid out, all these awful details and all the discussion of death penalty and capital punishment, et cetera, he was smiling and nodding along, like smiling and nodding along. So it made me wonder, what if he doesn't really know what he's saying? Like, what if he says to the judge, yes, judge, I understand everything, but he has no clue? How are we to know? How is the judge to know that this guy who's nodding and smiling really does know what's going on?
Well, because what the judge has been presented with before today, before his ruling today, were in-depth. They were supposed to be, hopefully they were, in-depth medical, mental evaluations that were done, one by a doctor for the defense and one by a doctor for the prosecution. Oftentimes, if somebody is still operating under those delusions, the doctors will both agree that the person is not competent. Even though they may be saying the words, there's a underlying delusion that they're operating under and they're not able to participate because they're reacting to outside stimuli, even though they're saying the words correctly. So there are two doctors who have, at least two doctors who've evaluated him and who have given reports to the judge. And based on those reports, the judge made a ruling today.
Okay, I got 10 seconds left, but I got to ask you this. If he mounts an insanity defense, and I fully expect that's what's going to happen, how does the fact that he took off afterwards play in? Because that shows consciousness of guilt. And, you know, to win an insanity defense, you can't know right from wrong.
Well, you have to be operating under a delusion that at the time made what you were doing right. So if I kill somebody because I believe they are a three-headed dragon who is about to kill a bunch of children, and I kill that person based on that delusion, and I run because I'm running away from one of the heads of the dragon, that is a justifiable insanity defense under the law. But if the devil told me to do it, it's not.
Well, yeah, it's always interesting. And also, I don't know if he can suggest that his dad was a three-headed dragon. It seems that whatever threat was neutralized when he was beheaded. But I can't wait to have you back, because this case is going to be super interesting. Alexandra Kazarian, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, coming up next, the next best thing to a televised confession. Wade Wilson didn't take the stand in his recent double murder trial in Florida, but he had plenty to say in jailhouse phone calls with his girlfriend, and none of it was helpful to his case. And if you have any doubt that Wade Wilson is a sadistic murderer, you need to hear these tapes. They're next. When we first heard the name Wade Wilson, his lawyer was asking a Florida judge for permission to use lady makeup to cover up his extensive face tattoos in court, some of which were like swastikas. No sense in inflaming the jury, right? Murder trial. It did not matter, because the jury ended up convicting Wade Wilson of strangling two women and mutilating one of them by running her over with a car repeatedly till she looked like spaghetti, in his words. The jurors, I'm not surprised, recommended death as Wilson's punishment. And later this month, he's going to be formally sentenced. In the meantime, this violent double murderer has somehow attracted troves and troves of groupies who plead his innocence and claim he was framed. They send him messages of love and risque photos, and they plead for the judge to, quote, let Wade live. The fact is, though he pleaded not guilty to the charges, Wade Wilson never denied what he did. He just blamed it on drug use, head injuries, mental health issues. And now we can actually hear him admitting to the murders multiple times in 2 different recorded jailhouse phone calls with his then sweetheart. No mention of drugs or head injuries in the phone calls. In fact, no mention at all that there's anything wrong with murder. Take a listen.
You can talk in code or whatever you have to. Just please.
No, baby, they already know. I don't have to talk in code.
Well, then tell me what happened then. I just
Killed the bitch.
Why, Wade? Why?
Because we went to this dude's house, Mila, and remember when he kept showing us the pictures? Oh, I got this, or whatever.
Yes.
So I went to his house and I did a lot of it. Like, he was giving me a lot, and I was doing a lot of it.
The girl?
Huh?
Why did you kill that girl?
I shouldn't have. I'm wrong.
Tell me what happened. Did you have sex with her? You went and killed her? What?
No, I didn't have sex with her. I killed her, though.
Why? Why, Wade?
Because I was freaking out on those drugs. Whatever he gave me must have been like bath salts or something else. It wasn't cocaine.
What happened to where you grab a knife and stab her? What happened?
I didn't stab her. Who said I stabbed her?
People keep saying you stabbed the girl. How'd you kill her?
No.
You choked her out.
I choked her out until she died. Until she was dead.
You that you were going to do that to me one day.
Neela, I was never going to do that to you, babe.
But did you kill the second girl at that point?
No. I think I killed her later.
You think?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. I killed her after I told you. What, babe?
Like, you say things that people remember when they kill somebody.
I killed her after I told you.
Why? Why couldn't you just rob her? Why did you have to kill her?
I'm sorry. I don't know.
Why? I kind of want to know why. What was going through your head? So I heard that you choked her out. She didn't die. She got up and ran. You ran her over with the car. Is that how it went?
That is, yeah, it is. She didn't get up and run. That's not true. I choked her out, pushed her out of the car, and then I ran her over with the car.
How did you get her in the car?
She got in by herself.
So she got in the car by herself.
Yeah.
And you took her out in the car.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Took her out of the car, and then you
ran her over. Yeah, like 10 times.
You are the worst killer ever. You're
I am.
driving that girl's car. You're
I am.
her cell phone.
I am.
And then trying to pull me in the dead girl's car. You're the worst killer ever.
That was the worst. That was the worst ever. Yeah, it was. That was the worst kill ever for sure. For sure, definitely.
Own, there's,
Shut up.
Fingerprints here. You're not driving her car. Wait.
Well, my car was out of gas. So how do you use hers?
You don't even know how to drive a stick shift.
I can't even drive the stick shift. You're right. Baby, I can't. You're right.
You actually are driving that girl's car around.
Hey, at least she wasn't in the trunk while I was driving around. At least she was not in the trunk while I was driving around.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome for that.
I swear I don't even know what to say, except this. Wilson is due to learn his fate on August the 27th. It's 3 weeks from today. So get your popcorn, because I am going to keep you posted on this guy. Coming up next, it took a Louisiana jury less than an hour to find a suspected serial killer guilty. But here's the weird part. It's the second time he's been convicted of the same murder. And actually, that's not even the weirdest part of the story. The hunting tags that he claimed the government gave him to go out and kill people. That's the part I really need to explain. And I'm going to do that next.
connects 100,000 Delta employees so they can make every customer feel like they've arrived before they've left the ground. This is how business goes further with T-Mobile for Business.
All right, time now for Perp Walk of the Week. South Louisiana, near Baton Rouge. A few days ago, suspected serial killer Ryan Sharp was just convicted of first-degree murder, and it only took the jury an hour. Actually, it took a little less than a full hour for that to happen. Ryan Sharp is accused of killing 3 men and trying to kill a 4th, but it's his story that kind of stands out. He said that he believed that the government issued him hunting tags to hunt down and kill human targets. Actual people, like deer tags in the fall. That was literally his defense in court. I want to bring in Kieran Jolla. She is a reporter who covers the Baton Rouge area, and she's the founder of the digital news platform Unfiltered with Kieran. So he pleaded insanity, like, correct me if I'm wrong, he confessed, and his whole case hinged on him saying the government gave me tags to legitimately kill people. Was there more to it? Because that I would think it would take 10 minutes to convict him with that story.
In fact, Ashleigh, just being in the courtroom and listening to everybody, they all kept saying, I think he's crazy, but he's not insane. He knows right from wrong. And that confession tape that actually played in the courtroom, the things that he said, he detailed how he was given hunting tags and that there were 3 tags that he had to fill. He actually had 5 total. 2 of them went to a deer. He had already killed a deer, and that counted for 2. The rest of the other 3 tags, though, he had to kill people. So he killed 3 people. The 4th one, Buck Hornsby, he ended up wounding because he said he didn't want to kill him.
So you just blew my mind with the fact that 2 tags is 1 deer, 1 tag per person, that part. But you had a chance to exclusively speak with the victims' family members and also, Ryan Sharp's family members.
And that was the interesting part, Ashleigh. The victims' families, I've kept in touch with them for the last 7 years. And this has been really hard because this is actually the second trial that they've had to go through because the Supreme Court tossed out the first one. That was back in 2019. They had an 11-1 jury came back and found him guilty. Supreme Court said you have to be unanimous. And after that, they now went to trial just now, 7 years later. And yes, I spoke to the victim, Brad DeFranceschi's father-in-law, as well as Ryan Sharp's family, who spoke out for the very first time in 7 years.
Move on. Be able to move on. 7 years of living around his schedule, his attorney, the court. But now we'll be able to move on and go about our lives without having to be on a schedule for them.
Our prayers that have always been there with the victims and their families, our sorrow has always gone out to them and anyone else who is involved and who has been saddened by this event. We'll offer them peace, and I pray that today's verdict will bring them closure.
And actually, I even spoke to Ryan Sharp as he was walking out and asked him if he had anything to say. He told me, no, ma'am. So at least he was respectful. I even asked if he had anything to say to Brad DeFranceschi's family, and he just kept on walking.
Well, he's got a couple more trials to go because they're doing them, individually now after the debacle from before. So keep us posted. Kieran Jolla, thank you. Always good to see you. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
All right, coming up next, the Ohio man who gunned down his own 3 little boys last year and then sat down and calmly waited for the police to arrive. He has just been sent to prison for life. But right after the sentence was handed down, something happened. A pile of new details were released about what happened on that horrible day and what led up to such a bewildering crime, including a bizarre song that Chad Dorman was listening to before he opened fire on those little boys.
I'm looking for an exit, I'm getting boxed in. The dogs are getting closer, gonna find my fox den. The truth is on my tongue, tongue. I wonder, should I tell? Or maybe just let it lie between happy and hell.
I'm going to leave you tonight with a couple of updates, big and small, in the cold-blooded murder of 3 little boys in Ohio. The Dorman boys, Clayton, Hunter, and Chase, were just 7, 4, and 3 when their father cocked his gun a year ago June and then shot all 3 of them dead at their home just west of Columbus, Ohio. That father, Chad Dorman, was just sentenced for that unspeakable crime. Late last week, he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of murder, and he was given 3 life sentences. So that's the big update. But the prosecutors also released some minute-by-minute details of Chad's actions leading up to the moment that he gathered his whole family in the master bedroom of their home and then began executing the boys one by one, even giving chase until all 3 of them were dead. Turns out the night before, Dorman coached his oldest son Clayton's baseball team and everything seemed normal. Next morning, he drove to work listening to this song called Happy in Hell by Colt Ford. Have a listen.
Is there a right way? Is there a wrong path? Gotta know which way to go, and will I cry or laugh? My heart is really racing.
Later that day, Dorman visited this clinic inside a supermarket, stood there, but left after 2 minutes of waiting with no one at the counter without being seen. At midday, he called his father and he said the words, quote, Clayton is going to be the hardest one. But he didn't explain to his father what he meant. It was confusing. He had lunch with his wife, he played with the kids, he did yard work. And then, prosecutors say, about 3:30 in the afternoon, he started reading the Bible, walking around the house and mumbling, Chad knows what's right. And then he went for his rifle. That song that I just played you, all about a wrong path and happy in hell, that was about an affair. It wasn't about being unhappy or killing or anything. It was about an affair. So it was still a bit bewildering if that song had anything to do with anything. But in case you were wondering, those 3 life sentences that were handed down for Clayton and Hunter and Chase, 7, 4, and 3 years old, those life sentences are without the possibility of parole. Thank God for that. Thank you for being patient. It's been great to have you this Tuesday night. We'll be back tomorrow on Wednesday. Meantime, stick around. My pal Cuomo's coming up next.
Now, welcome the next Vice President of the United States, Tim Walz.
Hello, I'm Chris Cuomo. Thank you for joining me here at NewsNation. It's another historic moment together tonight. Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, is Kamala Harris's choice as her VP running mate. The Democrats think they took a step towards winning, and the right thinks it's a leap to the left. So what do you think? Let's get after it. Overwhelmingly, Democrats call Walz a good choice, or at least a safe choice to me. Now, those two mean very different things to me, and they both warrant our attention. First, here's what works with Walz. He's a governor. He's popular, certainly more so than Harris or Biden or Trump or Vance in his state. He's over 50%.